As I was going through some of the individual practice problems on the geometry section, it occurred to me that there are a couple of other things during that group practice session we just did that I left out that are really kind of important. Now, please keep in mind, I'm going to warn you, what I'm getting ready to do is either late 8th grade content and some high school content. So it's hard. I totally get that. But I wouldn't be taking the time to try to explain it to you ahead of time if I didn't think that you'd be able to use it as you're working on these problems. And one of the things that you're going to see all over the Explorer is they love, and I do mean love, triangles, especially right triangles. And something special about right triangles, remember the right triangles are triangles that have a little box in the corner which represents a 90-degree angle, although they don't necessarily always put a box there. Sometimes it'll say 90, but that's what a right triangle is. Way back in the day, a gentleman called Pythagoras realized a special property of triangles. He noticed that if you take the two shorter sides, which are called legs, and you take them to the second power, and then you add them together, it gives you the same thing as the longest side, the hypotenuse, to the second power. Now, if you've forgotten what the second power means, no big deal. You've got a calculator that you can use that will help you here. So, this triangle, for example, I know it's a right triangle because if I do, so one side is 4, one shorter side is 4. So if I do 4, raising it to the second power, remember that's how you make that 2. It's kind of like the arrow is like lifting the 2 up in the air. And then I add it to, so if I do plus 3 raised to the second power, I get 25, which happens to be, what I get if I do 5 raised to the second power. That also gives me 25. So he noticed, in a nutshell, that if you take the two shorter sides and you take them to the second power and add them together, it'll always give you the third side to the second power. And that's really going to come in handy on the test, which you will see in just a little bit. So again, every right triangle on the planet, if you take the two shorter sides, so 8 squared and 6 to the second power, and add them together, it's always going to give you the third side to the second power. And remember how to do that to find something to the second power. So I would do 8 raised to the second power, like I have here, plus 6 raised to the second power, like I have here. Hit enter, and look, it gives me 100, which also happens to be the same thing as 10 raised to the second power. So 10, it balances out. That is going to be very handy information for you while you're dealing with the Explore part, the little practice problems that you're getting ready to do. Another thing that you're going to see, and guys, what I'm getting ready to show you right now, this is high school content material. However, you can do it. All you got to do is listen to a couple pointers from me and then use a little bit of logical reasoning. Now, you might not have any idea what this little jacked up symbol is right now. It's called a square root, just FYI, in case you don't know. And you know what? You don't even have to know what that symbol really means for now, because your calculator will figure it out for you. So look at this calculator. See this little tiny yellow jacked up, that looks like a little jacked up symbol right there? Division symbol right there? That's your square root button. So let's say I wanted to figure out this 2 is under the square root. That means you're finding the square root of 2. So because this little jacked up button is the yellow and it's the little tiny one, that means I have to hit this second square root, and then whatever I put underneath it, my calculator will find the square root of it for me. So it's this crazy decimal that I've got right now, which I'm just going to round to 1.4. You're going to see in just a little bit why it might be important for you to find out how much this number is worth. So the first thing I did is I used my square root button. I did second square root, just typed in a 2, hit enter, it gave me this crazy decimal, which I'm just going to round to 1.4. But there's still a 6 hanging out here to the side. So what does that mean? Well, what does it always mean when something is just sitting next to something else in math? It means multiply. So this actually means 6 times this crazy decimal. So I'm going to do times 6. So this whole number is worth somewhere around, if I'm just estimating, about 8.5. Because I found this, I used my calculator to find the square root of 2, and then I multiplied 6 by the square root of 2. Again, this is going to come in handy for you in a little bit. You're going to see why I've gone over this with you ahead of time, just to make sure it's stuck. Why don't you guys try at home? Just grab your calculator, or not at home, in class. Grab your calculator and try to just give me a good estimate of what this would be right here. I'm going to be just a minute on the calculator. Try it out. So let's see how we did. So first of all, I'm going to do second square root and hit my 5 and then enter to see what the square root of 5 is. So it's like 2.2 and then the rest of this jacked up decimal. Because the 5 is sitting next to it, I'm then going to do, to finish this off, I'm going to do times 5. So I know that this whole number right here is worth somewhere around 11.2. So it's going to come in very handy for you to be able to get a good estimate of what these numbers are worth. Make sure you do the square root first and then multiply the number after it, because it's easy to make a mistake if you don't do that. And hopefully these couple of pieces of advice will help you. And again, the stuff you're getting ready to do, especially the geometry, guys, it's hard. It really is. But I know you can do it. 2 big things besides the review we just did. Remember how to figure out how much a number like this is worth. And then secondly, remember that on a right triangle, if you take the 2 shorter sides here and make them to the second power and then add that together, it'll give you the same thing as the third number, as the longest side squared. That's going to be some very good advice for in just a little bit.